Come chat with Nicholas. He'll listen to you, then he'll laugh, and then he'll cry with you. It's all in a safe space for you to speak your truth. Oh, come let's chat with Nick.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of From Startup to Wunderbrand with Nicholas Kuhne. Tonight, we've got Uzair Ahmed, who is a solutions consultant at Cottonwood Automation. We're going to talk about automation. We're going to talk about search engine optimization and email marketing and a couple of things that we all find quite interesting. But I want to go a little bit into Uzair's background. So you're an expert in automation and outsourcing. So we're gonna touch on that a little bit. You've had quite a lot of entrepreneurial success. So I want to talk about some of the businesses that you've started, as well as how you went about funding some of those businesses. But really, it's just a pleasure to have you on board. And one of my first questions is, where on earth are you?
I'm here in Canada, in Edmonton.
Good. So why don't you, I've given a small sample of your track record here, but why don't you give us a 360 in terms of your background, where you grew up, schools, and what drove you to be an entrepreneur?
Okay, yeah. So I graduated from school as a chemical engineer, and I started working in the corporate world for a few years. But I read this book, Millionaire Fastlane, and one big thing that stuck out with me was, like, if you work in a corporate job, you have to, if you want to make more money, you have to beg your boss for more money. Or you're going to beg someone for more money, right? And if you had your own business, you would just increase your prices or lower your cost. There's just so many more options that you would have. There's no begging anyone for anything, right? So that part really stuck with me. So I quit my job a few years in to start my own company. And I built this business out of a coffee shop. It was called Instamec. And we wanted to build a Uber for mechanics. So we built our technology and we're like, okay, this is going to be so easy to have a mechanic come to you. It's going to be a no-brainer. And, everyone told us it couldn't be done. And I can see why they said that. But, through using a lot of automation, building our own systems and everything in play, we built it to a profitable business that expanded to 23 cities. And we got it to the point where it was running itself, and it still runs itself. I don't do anything for it anymore, except look at the numbers once a month. And as long as they're increasing every month, I'm happy. And that's what's been going on for the last 3 years, right? And then I spent a lot of time playing golf and just hanging around with my free time. Then I got bored. I'm like, what am I going to do all this free time, right? And I thought, through talking to my friends and through my network, people struggled with this exact same thing that I saw, which was like, build a business and have it run for you and continuously grow on its own. And that's when I just fell into this automation stuff because with my business, I had automated a lot of all my processes, internal communications, everything was automated. And then I used overseas labor to run the business at a fraction of the cost. And these two things were things that people needed a lot of help with. And that's how I got started with Conduit Automation, because I realized that there was a lot of people that needed this exact same thing that I took for granted. And that's what I've been doing ever since I started this year.
So I'm going to go back quickly to Instamec, because how you branded and started that business, or the communication, the automation of the communication that you're doing with clients, is obviously key to keeping the wheels going. Mm-hmm. What type of automation are you using for your marketing? So Google ads, etc., for Instamec?
So for SEO is like a long-term play, as you already know. The thing about local SEO is different than national SEO, right? With local SEO, you have to just see what the websites in your niche are ranking for. So if you have websites with simple, ugly pages ranking high, you have to make simple, ugly pages. Because if you make really nice looking websites, you might look like a national brand, but they don't rank that well in local SEO. So you have to play the game that you're dealt. So I don't do too much automation for local SEO because I want to keep it as ugly and plain as the rest of my competitors, but just slightly better. But when it comes to Google Ads, some of the automations that I use is we check the weather every day, where depending on the weather, we run different ads. So if it's really cold outside, we're going to run a lot of ads for batteries and no starts and increase that budget. But if it's warm outside, they don't run those just run general ads, right? Plus, if our schedule is really busy, our ads turn off, or we reduce the ad budget, that we don't burn it up on leads when you can't service them, right? So there's a couple of examples of automations that we use.
So it's quite interesting you talk about local SEO, because that's where Google comes in, with where you have your Google business and you've got opening times, etc. But a lot of people forget that's free and that's available to you. I think a lot of startups and businesses sort of forget to optimize that side of Google for their businesses, especially for local or regional marketing.
Yeah, which is crazy to me because that you can build a 7, 8 figure business just on local SEO.
Yeah. And I think one of the problems folks make when they first get into SEO, Google Ads, is they forget where their target market is. They are fishing in a completely different ocean. Their ads are being spread far and wide across the internet to get lots of clicks, lots of views, but they're not quality views. They're not quality clicks. So I think the focus here is really to look at that localized SEO, localized Google Ads.
Yeah.
When you spoke about the weather change, that shows that you've got a deep understanding of your industry and your customer. How long did that take you to figure out, or how long did that take you to really calibrate so that it worked for you?
I mean, I didn't really start taking the automation stuff until later on in my business, but it took about a few years, like about 2 to 3 years of like understanding the business and understand what's going on. Because before I would do it manually, I'd be like, oh, it's so cold outside, let's do it now. But then I realized that, you can just set up an automation that looks at the weather every day. And depending on the weather, it will adjust the ads and run
Okay.
different ads.
But that sounds like a business opportunity just by itself in terms of selling off that
Well, that's where the
automation. That's probably,
automation stuff comes in, right? That's exactly it. People,
yeah.
I work with businesses, I spend the time to understand their business from the ground up. And then I come up with automations later on. I don't just set up automations. It's a very like high touch thing that I do.
Now, the automations that I am aware of are typically through Zapier, typically through things like HubSpot. So it's not my expertise area doing automation. What if somebody wanted to, is listening and says, well, I want to do those kind of automations too? How much coding is involved, or are there off the shelf products that you can use to simplify this process for you in terms of
You don't need to
automation?
know any coding. It is all off the shelf. It's like collecting Lego dots. It can be done. Obviously, like later on, you get more complicated code. A little bit of coding helps, but you don't need to know much about coding. You can do this all without knowing any code. If you can make Excel work, you can make automation. Excel is the
Obviously,
basic software out there, right?
well, obviously, we want people to come and talk to you, not do their own automation, but it is possible if you're
Yeah.
bootstrapping to do basic automation yourself. But let's talk about this home automation that I think that's the right term, yeah?
Yeah, home service automation. So
Home
it's working
service.
with home service
Let me
companies.
just start that again. So let me say,
Yeah.
so let's talk a little bit about home service automation and how you moved into that sphere.
Yeah. So with home service automations, it's mostly just working on automation projects for home service companies. So like plumbing, HVAC, electrical, and doing the same thing like I just showed you about the running Google ads based on the weather for an HVAC company. So depending on the humidity, for example, or it could be depending on the weather as well, I would run different ads and just do it automatically in the background.
So I spoke to a fantastic guest based in Tennessee, and he had a similar service, but it was for lawn care in the States. And it had
Mm.
the complexity about it is that it had both the supply side and the demand side. So they had the folks who were offering the lawn services, which they had to sell those services, plus they had the demand from folks looking for those particular
Yeah.
services. Are you
Like,
sort of in between that? Are you just focused on B2B, or do you have a B2C or a direct to consumer angle as well?
no, I'm only B2B. I only help
Okay.
businesses. But that's a marketplace to describe. That's what we did with our Instamec business. It was a
Yeah.
marketplace, but those are extra hard because you have to solve for both the chicken and the egg problem, the supply and the demand, right? So it's better to just hire the supply and focus on demand and transition to a marketplace later on.
Yeah, because it in essence duplicates your work, and you've got two very different, very complex set of customers. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can
It's
see
a tough
why
market. It's a tough
I
market.
can see why focusing on one area is important. I teach digital marketing here in Norway, and obviously we love speaking to entrepreneurs, and digital marketing is changed over the years? When you said you started Instamec, how many years ago?
2015.
2015. Okay, so that's heydays of Uber. The industry has changed somewhat. The
Yeah.
whole Uber industry, that whole Uberization trend has kind
Yeah.
of subsided a little bit. How have your digital marketing efforts changed or matured since 2015, and how have you brought those learnings into your new business? And I'm going to add one more question onto that. The first thing we're going to discuss is the importance of digital marketing, how it's changed from 2015 to where we are in 2023 now, and perhaps how Google's role has changed and your knowledge of Google has changed over the years.
Yeah. So SEO has gone a lot harder at the same time. Back in 2015, all the black hat techniques would work, spamming links, fake reviews, all that stuff. But it gets harder and harder every year, right? Map pack spam. But at the same time, it actually hasn't gone that much harder because all those same things do work. You can still run with all those things. It's a question of like how long can you run with those things for, right? But a key part of our strategy was to have multiple brands in the same city. So for example, like let's say you're a furnace company, you would have like furnace solutions and you would have like super furnace or whatever, like just, and then furnace help all under the same city so that when you show up on the map, you have a higher chance of showing up on the map pack. And then you
Yeah.
can, and you would, then all the fake stuff, like the fake reviews and the links and everything to work very easily back then. So you could just dominate the listing. It's not as easy anymore because it's just like things that should work don't work. Nothing makes sense anymore. So they do a lot more updates now, right? So techniques like that don't work as much as they used to, but we haven't really changed much with our digital marketing efforts. We spend a lot more time on customer retention now and referrals and building it ourselves and branding.
Okay. So you started out in chemical engineering. How have you become a brand and marketing guru? It wasn't obviously the career choice that you've chosen, and you obviously started an automation business, but it sounds like you are a pro at marketing, digital marketing, ads, etc. How has that been for you as a mind shift from engineering to marketing and brand?
But it's funny you say that because just because I went to school for engineering doesn't make me an engineer. You have to learn on the job, right?
Yeah.
So I learned marketing and sales and operations and automation on the job. And I had I've spent 7 figures in marketing so far, like more than 7 figures. And it's just like I've learned through spending and just figuring it out myself, right? And learning how everything works. So it's more about the process that goes behind how to learn that I was taught more than what I was actually taught.
Every entrepreneur that I've spoken to, or every strong marketer that I've spoken to, hasn't done a authentic marketing degree to become a successful entrepreneur. It all seems to be on the job training. And on my last podcast, we were speaking with another entrepreneur who'd spent multiple seven figures on advertising. And he said there's a problem now with attribution. When you are starting to spend more money on digital, Google, Facebook, X, all of these guys are saying, well, that click actually came from me. You can attribute that to me. Are you finding any issues where it says you've generated $1 million, but it looks like millions come from Facebook, millions come from, not 1 million, but excess numbers have come from these different platforms? How are you managing that in terms of spend and understanding where your sales are really coming from?
Yeah, the attribution problem has always been one of the toughest ones to crack. So what I do is I'll do direct attribution. So for example, if I get a lead off Google or Facebook, there's a direct ROI from there, right? But what you miss out on that is the power of branding. Like with branding, it's tough to figure out, like, is my branding working or not? But you'll know that it's kind of working because you'll see your sales going up every year, but you don't know which one it is. But the thing is, it doesn't matter which one it is because it only works as a whole. You can't really do branding in one way, right? So you have to just work on the top of the funnel. Like the strategy, like how do you even stand out? What do you guys even stand for? Like what's so unique about your brand? What's your brand voice? All those things that entrepreneurs like to miss because they want to make money now. But those things matter a lot in the long run, right? Like what do people associate with your name? And you start putting your name in random places throughout the city, and people just start seeing that. And then when they need something and you're like, they search up, maybe I need a mechanic, and you just show up on Google or SEO or whatever it is, they're likely to click on your result. But it's so hard to attribute that to your branding. And you start saying, oh, it's because Facebook is working. But if you went straight to Facebook, it might not be as effective, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it ties into the whole customer journey discussion, because somebody doesn't just go from, oh, doesn't just magically click a button to buy something. There's been a process behind that. There's been trial and error. There is seeing these ads a couple of times before. There's reading articles, there's reading reviews, etc. And I think you mentioned that with the furnace companies, those just were random brand names that you gave them, for example. And because automation, because with AI and all of the design tools becoming so cheaply, it's so easy to create a logo, a great payoff line, a website, social media images, etc. I think the value of traditional brands is slowly being degraded and eroded. You're talking about personal branding and about how when folks see your face, there's more credibility, there's more of a link to the business. How important have you seen a change in your branding strategy from branding logos to branding yourself as a main driver for the business?
I think I learned pretty early on that people connect with people more than connect with brands. So I started off putting my face on everything. Like all the YouTube ads, just me talking. All our branding is just a picture of me and me talking. And then people say things like, "Oh, you're the Instamec guy," and I don't even know who they are, but they'll know who I am. That's when I know I've done a good job. And then I talk about my story, and then people relate to that. And those are, even if you're running an HVAC business or a landscaping business, do not make it about brand. As much as you can, make it about you as the person without naming it after you. But I think people in the service industry trust faces way more than random brands.
Yeah, it's getting more and more, branding is getting more and more difficult in that sense. And you made an interesting point there. Don't name the business after yourself. There are a couple of reasons for that, I guess. If you want to exit the business, it can't, continue having your name. And one of the challenges of building a strong personal brand is that company often is stuck with you. So your name will be, linked with that company over time. So that is a risk factor. But one of the benefits, I guess, is that you can expand into different areas. So you've Instamec going into this new home service automation it's a logical stretch in terms of the business industry. If you had to go into making burgers, that might be slightly troublesome. But let's talk about the home services automation and some of the interesting stories that you maybe have there. Have you had any good success stories from the automations that you've had with some clients?
Yeah, so I've been working with a few clients, and I've noticed that their feedback is just like, wow, for the first time, like, I know what's going on in my business. I know when things are being missed. I'm not in the dark anymore. That's like a big part of when I work with people. And then when I show them like what a system actually looks like, they're just like, wow, that's how it's done, right? Because a lot of people think they're running businesses, but they just pretty much have a job that's very demanding. And when they think of in terms of system, when they think in terms of automation, they don't know what that even means, right? They can't even imagine what that looks like. So unless you've seen someone who's been there and done it, it's hard to really fathom the idea. But what the goal of every engagement that I work with, all the clients that I work with, are how do we build this business in a way where you can you can go on vacation for 2 to 3 months, and you will know exactly what's going on, and you won't stress at all. You won't come back to a complete mess up of a business. You're going to come back to a business still growing on its own. At the same time, you're very high level, but you still know exactly what's going on the ground. How do we get to that point? And that is a combination of, building the right systems, processes, automation, the right tools and technology. And when you combine all that together, then your business also starts to grow.
But
Because,
that
go ahead.
But that sounds like you're waving a magic wand or offering a magic wand to customers that everything is going to go swimmingly. And I know that's not what you're doing. There obviously have to be systems and processes and other folks in place. And they can't take their foot off the pedal, obviously, in terms of growing the business. I take it your role is to not just make them coast on auto, but to take them to the next level. Have you seen what is the best type of business for you to go into? Is it early growth stage companies? Is it established businesses? Is it what type of companies do you like working on?
Businesses between 500 to 2 million a year and taking those to the next level. They're like the business death zone, I call them, because at those businesses, like your revenues are higher, but your costs are also higher. You need someone to help you manage them, right? So your actual profits are very low. So you want to go from that to the next stage, which is 4 million plus, where you can have the same cost, but your profits are a lot higher. And that's why it's a death zone. To get from 2 million to 4 million is very difficult, but you have to get there, right? And you need to have the systems and everything in place, because once you get to 4 million, then getting to 10 million is a lot easier because you already built a lot of systems in already, right? But you're at that weird transition phase where it's like you built your way almost by yourself to get there. But now how do you get to the point where you actually can back off and just like let it grow? And you bring up the idea of like being able to focus on growth and sales. But at the same time, my business doubled and I didn't do anything for it. I didn't focus on growth or sales. I just noticed the systems itself. People knew what they were doing. They knew how to we could maximize the existing customers that we had already. So building the right systems in place, you can increase your average revenue per customer, profit per customer, increase your retention, increase so much more, right? Because it's really dangerous to think of yourself I'm in the business of getting leads constantly. You should be in the business of getting as much money as possible from the work that you're already getting business.
Yeah. I think that's such a smart concept. Maintaining and growing your current customer base is much more profitable and cheaper for you to manage than fishing for new customers as well. And I think a lot of folks forget that. One of the other things that you touched on, which I thought was quite interesting, the additional value that you potentially add to these businesses is that you allow them to be sold easier. And you allow them to perhaps open, and they've got the IP now that is more interesting than just having a HVAC shop or a mechanic business. You've got a business that, like you said, runs by itself and doesn't need that owner necessarily at the wheel to take it forward. So that for me is a value proposition for anyone looking at this type of automation that you're doing. It's a no-brainer.
The multiples are a lot higher for businesses that don't depend on the one owner, right? Everything is there. I can just buy and be hands off.
Yeah.
You're gonna end up paying more money for it. You're gonna have less value buyers and more like, okay, well, this is so much easier to buy. I know it's just sustainable. I know it's consistent. And a lot of people can just roll it up and add to their own business too, right?
Exactly. I want to touch a little bit on marketing automation, if you do any of that in terms of pure marketing, in terms of emailers and social media posts that are scheduled. Do you automate that yourself, or is that another platform that you use? And how important how important is email marketing for you in your business?
So I love email marketing because I think that's like the highest ROI thing. It costs nothing.
But they're emails. Emails are 100 years old. Everyone gets tons of spam emails. Why do you love emails?
So for my Conwood automation, I do outbound. And the way I do it is I set up like 20 different domains and I use Gmail and Outlook as my servers. And there's tons of lists out there, right? And then you can use something like Instantly or Smartly to send out a few leads. Make sure you land in the inbox. That's the number one thing. Make sure you land in the inbox, right? So you got to make sure you set up your systems properly so they land in the inbox. And then it becomes about the content. And if you target the right people and your content is well written, short to the point, but still like creates enough intrigue that they want to learn more and get you on the call, right? That's all you need to do. But I find that most people do a really poor job at almost all of these things. The content is too long and doesn't make any sense. And you talk about yourself way too much. You don't do a good job at targeting. And then you use one email address on a private server with no warm-ups or whatever and just blast it, right? And then they complain about how email marketing doesn't work. But email marketing has like the highest ROI out of any sort of marketing. And I don't believe that doesn't work. I think it 100% works.
Yeah. Well, I'm a very big HubSpot fan, and we do a lot of email marketing out of HubSpot and managing our lists, etc. So I do believe in email. I just wanted to hear from a person who still believes in email in the age of AI. So
Yeah.
thank you.
No, I don't use any AI in my email, like in the sense that I don't customize email for people because it's too obvious. You have to, here's the thing, if you're writing email, you have to not sound like a salesperson. That's the key. And a
Yeah.
lot of people sound like salespeople. And if you use AI, it's going to make you sound even more like a salesperson.
The issue with AI is exactly what you mentioned. People have got a bullshit radar, and they can spot a email that's been written by AI or an automated message quite easily. It's quite amazing that we haven't been trained, but you can tell something's written too well, or if it says "Dear Sir" in an email, that immediately just kills it.
I put typos in my email on purpose. I shorten words and I don't use proper grammar.
So all those who think that AI is going to eat all our lunch, they are a little bit mistaken.
It's not eating
Yeah.
your lunch. It's going to make you more effective if you know what you're doing already. But it's not, no one's going to use AI and suddenly be good at something if they were never good at it before.
Yeah. So we'll skip over AI because I think everyone has jumped on the AI bus, but I'm sure you've got a lot to talk about that. I want to talk about voice search and perhaps also another interesting tool that is growing in popularity, which is Google Lens, and also the Lens function on Pinterest for people making, for generating leads or getting people into your business.
I just never got into voice search. I never got into it. It's just using Siri and Google and all these different things are just so frustrating already. And they always get it wrong. And it's just, it's not going to take off until you can understand what I'm saying. It might, because it's not reliable enough. It might work a handful of times, but it needs to be like 95, 98% reliability because the frustration factor is too high.
You're absolutely right. But I think there is good potential for it for perhaps other industries. I think the fashion industry, I think furniture industries, housing, etc. There's definitely opportunities there. But when you've got strange words or difficult to pronounce names, and also if you listen to my accent, I think I speak beautiful English, but Siri and Google, it's a nightmare.
But I think the first thing Pinterest should have done, I don't know if they've done it yet, was like, it was such an obvious thing. I'm like, everyone has these boards and pins. Let them buy it. Make it so easy to buy it. But I don't know, do they have it yet?
No, I doubt that. They've got business accounts now, obviously, and you can buy directly through. Oh, do you mean that people can buy the boards or buy through Pinterest?
Buy it through Pinterest.
Yeah, you can buy through Pinterest. And it's gotten to a stage where you can use a lens on an image, and you can choose if you want a red belt, blue belt, pink belt, what season, etc. And you can buy it or direct you to the web page with that particular product. Pinterest is the largest image directory. It's basically the Google of images. So the majority of images in the world are from Pinterest. So they've got tons of your data, and they have now started monetizing it. And in terms of that, so you can have videos, you can put like a pixel on a video. If you like that dress, you can stop it, buy that dress. So there's a lot happening in the fashion field and on the lens side.
That's cool. Because I was on Pinterest in 2012 and I'm like, I love all this stuff, but it's pointless because I can't buy it.
They've taken customer feedback, and they've definitely listened to it. So go back onto, I would imagine your business could actually sell well on Pinterest if you take another look at it now, because you can hyper localize it. You can say, do you like this kind of, I don't know, all of the items that you're selling, etc. This is what a bad engine looks like. These are the guys who can fix it. And it's video, it's images. So I would go play around. It's definitely an interesting option. And if you're not looking for new leads, don't go to it. But that would be something to definitely look at.
Yeah, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
At least I'm looking to buy. I'm gonna buy furniture for my house. I'm gonna take a
Go,
look at that.
you can buy directly from Pinterest. Honestly, it's really good. One of the last things I want to talk about is, I'm not sure if you keep tabs of what Elon Musk is doing with Neuralink and sort of new advances that are happening in that space, but they've got monkeys that can use their brains now to do ping pong, and they are now going to start doing human trials. And I was talking to the user
Yeah.
experience design class today about how that's going to change their entire world, because we are no longer going to be stuck with screens, keyboards. We are going to be able to use our minds to move things across various new screens and technologies. Are there any interesting technologies that you think are going to disrupt not just marketing, but the world in the next while?
I think we're at the point right now we don't even know what's gonna disrupt it. It's such an exponential world that we live in, right? It's like asking a monkey how a skyscraper was built or how the plane flies. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what these AIs are gonna come up with. There's so many answers that we don't know I can guess what's gonna probably stay the same. I'm still gonna eat food with a fork and knife. I'm still gonna like my pizzas, but I
Yeah.
don't know it's really hard to predict. Because if you think about it, right? Like, if you look at if someone was born in like 14th century and then they were transported to the 18th century, things would look pretty much similar, right? But now let's say someone was born in the 19th century, like 1901, and now they're transported to 2023. They can't even begin to fathom anything that's going on in their life. They were just hearing with the steam engine. And now we have robots doing all the work. Like, we have cell phones, right? Even that itself was a huge thing. And we're going to space and stuff. Like, it's too much. So that's what I think we're at that age now. We're like 20, 30 years from now, we reach that point where I likely will not recognize what's going on.
I think to your point, we are going to have the next shift is going to be a seismic shift. I was
Yeah.
joking with my class saying, when I started studying, there was no YouTube, there was no TikTok, there was no Facebook, it just started out, and the iPhone hadn't come out yet. Now these guys have grown up with iPads, iPhones. The next generation of students are going to say, what's an iPhone potentially
Mhm.
in the next 20 years? So I think the changes, we can't even foresee what those changes are. We can have, I think, a clear idea, but I do know that automation is going to be part of that future. And I definitely think that the kind of
Well,
work that you're doing is not technology bound. It is about processes. And I
yeah.
think that's the strength and the benefit of what you're doing, is that it's processes versus being stuck on Google. You could transfer your processes onto any new technology that comes on now, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. But you know what, though? It's funny you bring that up, though, because our generation that started with technology, like, we saw technology build up as we were younger. We are the most technologically adept group of generation out there. Because if you think about the people that are younger, the students in your class, they grew up with the iPhone. The iPhone is so easy to use. We grew up with like DOS, like Windows DOS. Like, we had to like type in the exact instructions to get what we wanted to get done, right? We had to understand file systems. We had to understand so much random stuff that these kids don't ever have to think about. And we had to store files in the right format, in the right way. We had to understand like this file extensions, like even things like that makes us more capable, I think, in the new generation.
I think there is a bit of loss of technical skills
Yeah.
because of the ease of use of everything. But that's the point of technology, is to make things simpler. Same as ChatGPT. It's not to take our jobs. It's just to get rid of
Make friction.
the junk jobs that we are doing.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fantastic chatting to you.
Like,
And I'm going to check out your systems a little bit more and have a look at some of those furnace companies, see if they're still around. And I think your point about uh, automation and helping businesses just run more efficiently, and focusing on your current customers versus just trying to fish for new leads the whole time is
yeah.
it's a very basic business strategy, but it's one that people ignore. They're just going for growth the whole time, and forget
Mhm.
that sometimes it's not necessary to go hunting. You can lay a trap and let the prey come to you.
Come Chat with Nicholas, he'll listen to you. Then he'll laugh, and then he'll cry with you. It's all in a safe space for you to speak your truth.